Welcome to Human Health 101, Optimize Your Human Experience. I am your presenter today, Helen Marshall. I'm your Primal Health Coach and founder of the grain-free food range, Primal Alternative. You can find Primal Alternative stockists on our website. You can become a Primal Alternative producer. And after this presentation, you may be one of the lucky 3 people to win a free spot in my upcoming 21-day challenge, which is basically a 21-day journey encompassing a primal lifestyle done with a group of other awesome women like you. So if you're one of the lucky winners, I will be announcing the winners via email after this presentation. And if you want to join the 21-day challenge anyway, just Google Primal Alternative 21-day challenge and find the link to join us there. So let's talk about human health. Think about your own health. Think about the health of your immediate circle of friends or family. Think about outside of that circle to your larger group of acquaintances. Now envisage the breadth of the population, the people around you, the different people you see every day at the coffee shop, on the train, at the supermarket. What do you see? How many seem effortlessly happy and healthy, tuned into their body's needs and signals? How many of those people you envisioned seem to be living an optimal human existence? Now, how many of them appear outwardly to be suffering under the weight, oftentimes literally, of poor health or of disease? How many seem lost and bewildered as to how they could possibly have strayed so far away from health and what to do to get back to it? How many of you feel this way about yourself? Isn't it fascinating to observe how members of the same species can be living such vastly different existences? In what other species of the animal kingdom do you see this incredible diversity in the expression of health? Dolphins all look, behave, eat, move and play relatively the same as one another. Foxes are rarely overweight and out of shape with sore knees and bad backs. You've likely never seen an antelope roaming the rangelands popping antacids to help with digestion. And sloths can snooze the day away without needing a CPAP machine to help them breathing through their sleep apnea. Animals are designed to survive, thrive, evolve, and adapt. They're designed to be nimble, agile, strong, and to endure. But the human animal increasingly isn't doing any of these. So what happened? That's part of what we'll be talking about today. We're going to take a step back, way back before the trillion-dollar health industry stepped in to try and fail to make us better, back to who we were before we became the fat, sick, and bewildered species we are today. We'll toe dip into evolutionary biology, biochemistry, exercise science, and nutrition science to uncover clues that can help to bring us back to the badass creatures we're designed to be. Now, there will be a chance to ask questions at the end. You can ask questions as we go through in the chat box, which you can find in the more section. You just drop that down and you can chat in here. I'll just put a chat so everyone can see. If you have any questions, you can pop them in here. There we go. Clever, huh? Ever seen an old grainy black and white photograph of your great-great-grandparents? Were they overweight? Did any of them have diabetes or heart disease? Do you know how they died? Old age, maybe an accident, or an infectious disease? Back when we were a younger and healthier species, we quite literally lived long and dropped dead. That is to say that, presuming a person could make it through life without devastating infectious disease or accident, the way people died was simply by getting old and living to the end of their life. As recently as a few generations ago, people were not dying of epidemic chronic diseases like we are today. Something has been happening to our species. the humans of today spend much of their lives battling illness and premature death. Let's start this session by having a little bit of a real talk around who we are today and why we're just so much less well off now than we've ever been in our evolutionary history. Here's a short list of some of the modern diseases that our culture is currently dealing with. Heart disease, stroke, diabetes, obesity, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, fibromyalgia, alopecia. There are hundreds of autoimmune diseases. Irritable bowel diseases like IBS, Crohn's, colitis, celiac disease, thyroid dysfunction, clinical and subclinical, pancreatitis, that's a hard one to say, and GERD or acid reflux, and more. There's so many more diseases. You might even be suffering from some of the diseases that I've mentioned yourself. So here is a Wikipedia lifestyle diseases definition. Lifestyle diseases are defined as diseases linked with the way people live their life. This is commonly caused by alcohol, drug, and smoking abuse, as well as a lack of physical activity and unhealthy eating. Diseases that impact in our lifestyle are heart disease, stroke, obesity, and type 2 diabetes. The diseases that appear to increase in frequency as countries become more industrialized and people live longer. They can include Alzheimer's disease, arthritis, atherosclerosis, asthma, cancer, chronic liver disease, or cirrhosis. It's such a cheery picture. Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, metabolic syndrome, chronic renal failure, osteoporosis, stroke, depression, and obesity. Yay. You don't have to have one of these illnesses currently. If you don't have one of these illnesses currently, then you must certainly know someone who does, right? You may have even lost someone important to you to one of these diseases. Your ancestors, the ones in that grainy black and white photo, did not have to worry about these diseases. They were so incredibly rare, in many cases non-existent, even as recently as 3 or 4 generations ago, that they didn't even pop up on the radar. In 1900, the top 3 causes of death in the United States were pneumonia or influenza, TB, and diarrhea. Communicable diseases accounted for about 60% of all deaths. In 1900, heart disease and cancer were ranked number 4 and 8 respectively. Since the 1940s, what happened then? The majority of deaths in the United States have resulted from heart disease, cancer, and other degenerative diseases. And by the late 1990s, degenerative diseases have accounted for more than 60% of all deaths. Metabolic syndrome, sometimes referred to as syndrome X, which gives it a kind of sci-fi, quasi-apocalyptic feel, and that's really not that far from the truth. Metabolic syndrome is a pandemic that is quietly plaguing the developed world. Metabolic syndrome is not itself a disease, it's a collection of modern diseases that are so symptomatically interwoven and increasingly common that they have been lumped together under this category and given a name. It's a bit like IBS. It's just a cluster of symptoms. This helps doctors and other health professionals to diagnose patients, and that's about it. These diseases are all incredibly new in humans' evolutionary history. We can trace their origins back 3 or 4 generations. Almost none of these conditions existed previous to that, at least not at a high enough frequency that doctors had to come up with a collective name for them. Even if you do not have a diagnosed metabolic disease, how many of us struggle with symptoms of unwellness day in and day out? I know I did. How many of us have decided it must be just a part of getting older, that we must just have a genetic glitch passed down from mum or dad, and that this general unwellness just our cross to bear? We simply live with these feelings of general unwellness day in and day out. We have accepted them as our new normal. But guess what? They're not. Possibly one of the greatest assaults that modern humans face with regards to their health and wellness is 100% grade A bewilderment or overwhelm about how we got here or what to do about it. Do you feel like you've completely lost touch with what to eat or how to move? The health and fitness industry is a multi-trillion-dollar industry for a reason, and it's got out of hand. Everywhere you look, there's conflicting information about what to do. Portion control, calorie counts, if this fits your macros, meal plans, expensive diet programs. And none of it appears to be working. Well, at least not in the long term, not sufficiently enough to get us back to who we are designed to be. We can continue to hear statistics much like those shared so far about how we are sicker and fatter than ever. But what we really need is an understanding of how this happened biochemically and what to do to get back to the humans we once were. In an effort to simplify, sometimes it's easier to just get back to our roots. Shown here are two members of a modern hunter-gatherer tribe, modern enough that they were able to have their photograph taken, despite the absence of ab rollers, spin classes, and BCAA supplements. They managed to stay in incredibly good shape. Look at that six-pack. Depending on where your beliefs lie on the spectrum of evolution or creation, we may be as old as 25 million years or as young as 2000. Either way, there is no denying that the human animal today is vastly different from what it was generations ago. A human is designed to be strong enough to withstand difficult pressures in order to continue to survive and evolve. Food scarcity, predation, infection, assaults put upon us by our environment. Life is much easier for us now, but stepping back and relating our current health situation to that of our ancestry helps us to simplify diet, nutrition, and lifestyle. So, how is a human meant to move, eat, and live? The two main pressures humans faced before modern civilization were starvation and predator danger. These dangers of extinction were challenges we had to face and learn to overcome as a species. The knowledge of how not to die was passed down through the generations, and the human race thrived to the point that it soon found itself perched atop of the food chain. In our current life, we simply don't have the same dangers of extinction. Life has become vastly more comfortable for humans, and the lack of pressure has ground our evolution to a halt. We can live an unhealthy life with no evolutionary penalty. It's relatively easy for us to take these bad choices and continue to live. We may be overweight, we may not feel well, we may even be diagnosed with a metabolic disease, and that disease may prove to be acutely fatal. But as a species, the pressure is off. We simply stopped trying not to die. Not only are we safely out of the way of predators, but even the threat of undernourishment has been remedied by rendering the ability to access food and food-like items virtually effortless. There is no evolutionary pressure to make the right choices to support our continued evolution as a species. We've become sedentary, fat, and a sick animal. So what the heck happened? How did we get to where we are now? And how did we undo our human badassery? the agricultural revolution. We started just as any animal, learning survival by adapting. Then we started to get smart. We organized. We had to. Our population was exploding, and we needed to figure out a way to support the exponential growth of our species. Food, which was at one time just another survival necessity like oxygen, became something we needed to take ownership of, to mechanize and to control. We began domesticating and growing our own food, plants and animals. We found ways to make this food production increasingly efficient, achieving higher yields. We started to base our diet on these cheap, fast, and easy fuels. Things went downhill quickly in evolutionary terms. Agriculture worked to feed our growing population, but we had to square peg, round hole food choices that, yes, were easy to grow and harvest and mill into flour, but no, did not resemble what we'd grown up with for the millennia that preceded. The agricultural revolution happened about 10,000 years, give or take. This sounds like a long time, but relatively to how long we've been evolving, it's simply a tiny blip on our evolutionary radar. If human evolution were a football field, the agricultural revolution would represent 0.4 meters within the rest of the human history, making up the remaining 99.6. Not long, eh? The worst mistake in the history of the human race. Dr. Jared Diamond, an evolutionary biologist, physiologist, and Pulitzer Prize-winning professor of geography at UCLA and author of Guns, Germs, and Steel, goes so far to say that the agricultural revolution was the worst mistake in the history of the human race, and that we're still struggling with the mess in which agriculture has tumbled us, and it's unclear whether we can solve it. Fast forward to modern civilization and the ability to access food and food-like items. It's virtually effortless. There's no evolutionary pressure to make the right choices to support our continued evolution as a species. We've become a sedentary, fat, and sick animal. Life expectancy from 26 to 19 years, life expectancy at birth in the pre-agricultural community was about 26 years. But in the post-agricultural community, it was 19 years. So these episodes of nutritional stress and infectious disease were seriously affecting the ability to survive. Height dropped from 5'9" to 5'3" in males and 5'5" to 5 foot in females. Skeletons from Greece and Turkey show that the average height of our hunter-gatherers towards the end of the ice ages was a generous 5'9" for men and 5'5" for women. With the adoption of agriculture, height crashed, and by 3000 BC, it had reached a low of 5'3" for men, that's tiny, and 5 foot for women. By classical times, heights were very slowly on the rise again, but modern Greeks and Turks have still not regained the average height of their distant ancestors. Lifestyle disease. Another example of paleopathology at work is the study of Indian skeletons from burial mounds in the Illinois and Ohio River valleys. At Dixon Mounds, located near the confluence of the Spoon and Illinois rivers, archaeologists have excavated some 800 skeletons that paint a picture of the health changes that occurred when a hunter-gatherer culture gave way to the intensive maize farming around AD 1150. Studies by George Armalagos and his colleagues at the then University of Massachusetts show these early farmers paid a price for their newfound livelihood. Compared to the hunter-gatherers who preceded them, the farmers had a nearly 50% increase in enamel defects, indicative of malnutrition, a fourfold increase in iron deficiency, anemia, and a threefold rise in bone lesions reflecting infectious disease in general, and an increase in degenerative conditions of the spine, probably reflecting a lot of hard physical labor. The government food suggestions. What could possibly go wrong? In the 1960s, the USDA and other national government agencies, including the UK and Australia, stepped in to help us understand how to eat. This is one version of the US food pyramid, but most developing nations have got something similar. Important to remember that USDA stands for United States Department of Agriculture. This government agency is not to be confused with the US FDA, which is the Food and Drug Administration, which is responsible for ensuring the safety of foods and drugs. This food pyramid and every iteration of it before and since, including the daily plate, which we have in Australia, came directly from the agricultural industry, who has a financial interest in how much we eat. In this version, we can see that fruits and vegetables have moved to the base of the pyramid, suggested 5 to 7 serves a day. This is the spot grains previously occupied for decades. Most can agree that humans need to eat more vegetables. That's the common ground that just about any nutritional or health dogma can at least agree upon. The second and third most prominent groups include agricultural commodities, grain, 3 to 5 serves, and dairy, 4 serves. The USDA would absolutely love for us to eat 7 to 9 servings of 2 of its most valuable commodities every day. Despite how well these food items support the bottom line of the Department of Agriculture, biochemically, they do not support the optimal fueling of humans. We'll explore the specifics around why our food pyramid base is all wrong for us later in this presentation, but for now, simply understand that the original food pyramid was created in the 60s, approximately 3 to 4 generations ago, right when the health of our species began to go off the rails. At this point in time, most people know that there's an obesity crisis on our hands, truly just one of many concurrent health crises we're dealing with as a species. So what caused that spike right around 1980? Big Macs. When faced with these kind of statistics, most people declare fast food and processed food to be the problem. Those types of foods are definitely not optimal human fuel, but the definition of processed food could be explored a bit more deeply. One might suggest that any hybridized grain milled into flour and combined with other natural and unnatural ingredients could easily be considered processed food like bread. But the sharp spike shown in this graph has another contributing factor. Any guesses? Right around the 1980s is when the low-fat, low-calorie diet dogma came into popularity. So just to recap, at this point in the masterclass, we've got the USDA telling us that their commodity crops are the most important food group. Now we've got the medical and fitness establishment telling us that carbohydrates are our most important macronutrient. And suddenly we've got a pretty significant blip on our fat and sick radar. That simply can't be a coincidence. Insulin is the master metabolic hormone. Its job is to facilitate fueling the body. When we digest food down into fuel, which is glucose, insulin's role is to bring that fuel into the cells. If the cells don't need or don't want the fuel, insulin's role is to encourage that fuel to be stored on the body as fat. You can see why a diet-obsessed culture like ours really should bone up on the biochemical role of insulin. Indeed, if you're looking to keep your body well-fueled and body fatness at bay, understanding how to keep insulin working properly is a very important place to start. When insulin function is impaired, things become very metabolically difficult for us. This image represents what the casual rise and fall of blood glucose and insulin should look like. Insulin simply responds to blood glucose in kind. When there's a moderate amount of free glucose in the blood, a moderate amount of insulin is secreted to bring that glucose to the cells. The ideal of blood glucose and insulin is these gentle waves. When insulin function is working optimally, it doesn't feel like anything. It doesn't feel like hangry or afternoon diabetes, that snoozy, snacky situation that has you running to the vending machine at the office every day at 3 o'clock. Problems arise when those blood glucose levels spike to very high levels. When we eat too much, too frequently, or simply consume too much glucose in the form of carbohydrates or sugar, when we have more free glucose than our cells need. Hangry is not cute, and it's not a normal hunger response. In fact, it feels pretty horrible, and I know we've all been there. Your brain is in panic because it mistakenly believes that the cells have no fuel. In fact, there's plenty of free fuel, but the cells have become resistant to it. In a manner of speaking, that free glucose bounces off cells. It's converted to fat and stored in the body, theoretically for later use. The only problem is our bodies have no incentive to mobilize stored fuel because we keep the sugar train chugging. We just keep eating more and more carbohydrate and sugar, so the body wonders why it even needs to bother mobilizing the stored fuel. This is a legitimate 2017 Snickers product strategy driven by their "You're not you when you're hungry" ad campaign. These chocolate bar wrappers celebrate the symptoms of insulin resistance. Real. What's really troubling is that eating a Snickers bar when you're hungry is about the worst thing you can do. The cycle of insulin resistance. You get hungry, or more accurately, hangry. Hangry is very urgent, chaotic expression of hunger triggered by the fact that your cells are undernourished and your brain has decided starvation is well underway. Hangriness encourages you to find the fastest form of blood glucose that you can get your hands on. So things like chips, muffins, cookies, carbs. So at this point in the masterclass, I just want to let you know that if you felt like this, you're not on your own, and it's not your fault. And it's not that you're a big, greedy pig. This is your body's response. Your body is serving you, and your body is trying to promote survival, trying to stop you from dying, right? Back to the masterclass. As it is designed to do, insulin responds in kind. A large dump of insulin is secreted into the bloodstream to take up the sugar. Insulin takes up the glucose and travels to the cells to deliver it. But there's just so much sugar and insulin knocking on the doors of the cells that they've locked up shop. The specific receptors on the cells where insulin normally docks in order to release glucose into the cell is closed for business. The cell only needs so much fuel, and there's simply too much. Feeling dejected, insulin figures that you must have eaten all of those potato chips for a reason. You were starving. So it carts the sugar over to the liver, where it's converted to fat and stored on your body for later. Hurrah. Meanwhile, the cells who slammed their insulin receptors shut in defiance are still hungry. They trigger an urgent hunger signal to the brain. You get hangry. The cycle continues. Insidious weight gain ensues. This is something referred to as being overfed and undernourished because we've confused the insulin pathway and broken it so badly that the body has lost its ability to fuel itself. Meanwhile, we're still eating piles of food and it's just being stored on the body as fat, usually around the midsection for easy access. Insulin resistance now has a clinical name. Anyone heard of pre-diabetes? Other things making us fat and sick as a species. Diet isn't the only thing that's changed drastically in our recent evolution. We've also fallen prey to lifestyle assaults like chronic stress. The human body is well capable of dealing with stress. However, we've made our stresses a chronic, constant state of affairs. And that was never meant to be the case. We needed a stress response to advance and retreat in reaction to acute stresses, but the body is unprepared for a stress response that never retreats back into its bunker. We have little to no downtime. This will blow your mind, but we are not designed to be on the go all the time, day and night. Our ancestors spent most of the day doing very little, with bursts of cognitive and physical activity throughout the day as needed. A far cry from our current culture, which glorifies a jam-packed calendar. Toxic load. We eat, breathe, and touch more toxic substances in our day-to-day life than our delicate body systems were ever designed to withstand. One of the most prominent sources of toxicity in our lives is through industrial seed oils, shelf-stable franken-fats that have gone through incredible feats of chemistry in order to make it onto the bottle on your grocery store shelf. Poor quality sleep. Chronic stress makes us sleep poorly. Poor quality sleep is a physiological stressor on the body. This is a cycle that's hard to break, and according to much research, it's as much to blame or more for our current state of poor health as diet. Sleep is king. Blue light. Contributing to our poor sleep habits is the fact that we now spend much of our waking days staring at screens. Sometimes it's good when you're accessing amazing masterclasses like this. Screens exist on the blue portion of the light spectrum, and this blue light is almost totally foreign to our eyes and brains. The sun is our evolutionary preferred light source, but also life source. Amber, gold, and red. Blue light creates havoc in our brain, messing up our natural circadian rhythms, which are designed to line up with the rise and the fall of the sun. Synthetic or diminishing social connections. While you may not acutely be aware of the loneliness of our species, we are growing increasingly isolated from one another. And it's got like major implications on our health and quality of life because we have evolved to be social beings. Just as well we're all hanging out today. I love this picture. Do you love it? I used to teach aerobics. I used to wear leotards like that. And that's why I got so broken. So conventional wisdom has really failed us. And so it's not your fault, okay? And you can do something about it, so stay tuned. Eat right and exercise. That's what we were told to do to maintain our health. If it were that easy, we'd all be healthy. We wouldn't be in this societal health crisis that we're experiencing now, right? On a more personal note, how many people have tried to eat right and exercise only to not have it work for them? Like it's not working. We were told to follow a food pyramid funded by agriculture. We were encouraged to make a chaotic and ineffective macronutrient our primary fuel source. And we got very fat and sick very quickly. This triggered the billion-trillion-dollar health and fitness industry, which piled on even more conventional wisdom that simply hasn't worked. Low fat, caloric deprivation, food groups, exercise trends and fads, such as earn and burn. As long as you're burning it off, you can eat what you want. Exercise obsession, chronic cardio, and overtraining. And other diet programs like meal plans, macronutrient ratios, weight loss injections, having bits of our body cut out, and point systems. You can eat as much fruit as you want because there's no points on it, but it's full of glucose and carbohydrates. Da-da. So how can we get back to what we once were? We can see that humans were, at one time, naturally much healthier than we are today. And we can see that much of what has made us sick is well within our control. So are we just too far gone as a species? Or can we turn back the clock? Where our health is concerned, we may actually not be slaves to our genetic destiny. I love this. I love this. Stay tuned to this. This comes straight from our evolutionary history. Quite succinctly, We would not be where we are today if we did not have the ability to influence how our genes express themselves. Our evolutionary history is rife with selection pressures, assaults, and challenges that we had to adapt to. The malleability of our genetic expression is what enabled us to roll with the punches of evolution. A clear example of selection pressure at work is seen in humans who migrated north to Europe and Scandinavia and developed a lightening of the skin pigment in only a few thousand years. This allowed them to absorb more vitamin D in less time than a darker-skinned person. This was essential for survival in their sun-challenged climates. Those living in northern latitudes who were fortunate to have the light skin gene mutation were able to survive and reproduce, while those with genes for darker skin were far less successful at survival and reproduction at higher latitudes. Over time, this light skin genetic mutation wound up being the preferential genetic expression for that northern culture, and you'll see it still to this day. Genes are the messengers that signal your cells to function every moment of every day. They react to short-term acute threats to our survival and respond accordingly. Your short-term survival is of the gene's immediate concern because it stands to reason that protecting you in the short term will then keep you alive in the long term, right? Some genetic influences are fixed, so things like your height, your hair color, the size of your nose. You may have other family predispositions to things like obesity, heart disease, thyroid disease. However, these genes do not manifest unless they are expressed or switched on. So you need predisposition and expression to get your genetic disease present itself. So another example is if you drink a huge bottle of cola, that flood of sugar in your body, as we've already learned, will be met with an insulin response. Your body will dump the insulin to take up all of that sugar. In the short term, your genes call the shots on that solution because they know that all of that free sugar in the blood needs to be dealt with. But over time, your genes will start to assume that this incredibly high blood sugar scenario is the new normal, an evolutionary pressure the human is up against, and the expression of those genes will shift to one where insulin is always being dumped into the bloodstream at high doses, just in case. Hyperinsulinemia, got it, a condition in which there are excess levels of insulin circulating in the blood relative to the level of glucose, is thought to be the underlying cause of type 2 diabetes. In this example, type 2 diabetes was created by our diet behavior, and the genes created bodily processes to answer those behaviors. It stands to reason, and the research supports this, that our behaviors can then reverse the case and the effect of hyperinsulinemia. Got it. Put another way, it's your job to decide if your genes will express themselves healthily or not. And in this example, that hyperinsulinemia was caused by drinking a lot of cola every day, but it could have easily been caused by eating a lot of bread or pasta or Cheerios or Weet-Bix. The bottom line, you can send unhealthy signals to your genes and influence your health adversely, or you can send healthful signals to your genes and they will respond with health. You can be in control of your health destiny. Hurrah! You can change the expression of your genes. You are not saddled with your genetic expression of disease or poor health. It's not necessarily your destiny. That is flipping empowering. So at this point, we've learned some of the things that have afflicted our species with poor health, and we've learned that we have more control than we may have thought in terms of what type of influence we have on our expression of health. All we need to do is to make some simple shifts, returning to our habits, nutrition, movements, and behaviors that our ancestors knew that helped them to achieve almost effortless lifelong health. Let's get into that. Quick water swig. All right, so contrary to popular belief, glucose, so that's sugar or carbohydrates, is not our body's only source of fuel. In fact, when we look back at evolutionary history, it's plain to see that carbohydrate wasn't even our preferred fuel source. Fat was. So carbohydrates are a bit like batteries. Batteries offer a quick, cheap, and portable source of fast fuel. But when batteries die, they die. You achieve a sudden failure of your fuel source, and the only way to replenish it is to go and get more batteries from the vending machine in the form of corn chips or Skittles. Fat is like gasoline. It's like a slow burning fuel that sustains. And what's more important, gasoline or petrol empties slowly. You can keep your eye on the fuel gauge and refuel before you run out. When people say fat keeps you fuller for longer, this is what they mean. So fat is a slow burning, sustainable fuel. It satiates hunger for much longer than batteries do. So you can actually have control over your hunger and appetite instead of the other way around. So when you're burning fat as a fuel, you get like a slow, gentle warning that you're hungry long enough to start preparing a meal from scratch. It's not like this instant crash where you need to grab a handful of Skittles. Ugh, Skittles. So you can't go wrong with the foods that exist in nature. For the majority of our evolutionary history, humans ran their bodies primarily on a diet of animal proteins and the fats that came with them, and plants, and a little bit of starchy tubers and fruit, virtually no grains. And this really, really worked for us. It worked so well that we had almost effortless lifelong health right up until about 3 or 4 generations ago. When you transition your fuel source away from carbohydrate and towards fat, many things change. You achieve stable energy because your batteries aren't dying every 3 hours. Your appetite becomes a whisper, not a roar. Your mood stabilizes too. Hangry isn't cute on anyone. You have effortless weight management. Sugar isn't bouncing off your insulin resistant cells and being stored as fat. And tissue repair, autophagy, you can't say that word, autophagy, longevity. Once the body has adequate fuel, and our metabolic processes can be ticking along like a clock, and chronic self-inflicted metabolic disease can be stopped in its tracks. Like, seriously good news, peeps. We can begin to return to that long-living human animal whose body was designed to live long and then drop dead. That is an awesome quote from Mark Sisson from the new Primal Blueprint. And it's the team at the Primal Blueprint that have put this freaking awesome presentation together. Plants and animals encompass everything our ancestors ate to get the protein, fats, carbohydrates, vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, phenols, fiber, spelled the American way, water, and other nutrients necessary to sustain life, increase brain size, improve physical fitness, and support immune function. So we've all heard about healthy fats, but in order to declare a healthy fat, we first need to understand which fats are unhealthy and why. So bad fats are industrial, over-processed seed and grain oils, and they promote inflammation, aging, and cancer. There's also trans or partially hydrogenated, processed, packaged, frozen fast foods contain these sorts of fats, and these cause oxidation, inflammation, free radicals, and damage to the cell membranes. And excess puffer, omega-6, vegetable oils, processed foods, animals that have come from feedlots, these fats are pro-inflammatory and oxidized. Healthy fats. So once you know why bad fats are bad for you, you can get a better understanding of why healthy fats are so good. So healthy fats are good because they make you feel full for longer. They're anti-inflammatory. They are the preferred human fuel source, and they are a cell membrane component. So your cells need these fats to build and repair themselves. And they're really important for hormone creation and support. So good places to get your fats from are, so you've got your omega-3 fats. So you want to be looking for oily, cold water fish, grass-fed meat, organic eggs that have had a pastured diet, fish oils. You can take fish oil supplements. And all of these omega-3s are anti-inflammatory, very important for brain, immune, and heart cardio health. And then we've got saturated fats, which we've been told are so bad for us, but actually they're not. So meat, fish, fowl, eggs, coconut oil, butter, and we've got the monounsaturated fats, so avocado, I love avocados, macadamia nuts, olive oil, really good for good heart health and also very anti-inflammatory. So let's think about all the different grains that we can think of. So we've got wheat, barley, rye, oats, corn, rice, quinoa, buckwheat. Let's talk about anti-nutrients. Phytates, lectins, the chemical compounds in grains, they were designed to fend off predators. So like, for example, gluten has been designed to make predators feel ill. You may not be diagnosed as a celiac and may feel okay after eating gluten in bread, pastas, and other baked goods, but gluten is a chemical compound designed to elicit an immune, I don't feel so good response in any predator that attempts to consume it. And you're probably healthier without it. If you haven't tried eliminating gluten, I absolutely recommend you try it in the 21-day challenge. Lectins are natural plant toxins, and they damage intestinal brush borders and cause things like leaky gut, and they make an autoimmune response very likely. Phytates, which are also found in grains, are indigestible. They bind minerals in the digestive tract, so they'll make you deficient in things like calcium, iron, magnesium, zinc, vitamins A, B, C, and D, because they need to bind with those in order to leave the body. And in third world countries, there's like the third world deficiencies, and the United States of America is 50% deficient in the basic requirements for vitamins and minerals, which is shocking. Gluten is allergenic, inflammatory, and causes an autoimmune reaction. 33% of the population are intolerant or sensitive at some level to gluten. Gluten causes skin, joint, digestive, reproductive itis conditions. And celiac disease, it has little warning, and it can be quite a late onset until you realize you've got it. And there's absolutely nothing nutritionally urgent in grains that you can't get from another more bioavailable, less anti-nutrient source. And that goes for legumes too. So legumes, things like beans, peas, chickpeas, all of those things that you would eat, to thinking they were healthy, extra fiber. And sometimes they're considered to be plant-based, incomplete protein source, but they're actually a dense carbohydrate. So 1 cup of beans has got 10 grams of carbs and only 6 grams of protein, whereas a cup of chopped chicken breast has got 0 carbs and 35 grams of protein. So in order to match the protein quantity of chicken with beans, you'd be getting 58 grams of carbohydrates with your 35 grams of protein, not to mention the anti-nutrients, and not to mention that beans are an incomplete protein. So in order to complete the protein, you'd have to add another source of plant-based proteins like grains, more carbs, more glucose, more insulin. You may be able to eat bread, but you could have had broccoli. That's much better for you. So here's 2 examples of batteries. Which is healthier and why? Gumdrops are obviously junk food, but why? Because they're made of sugar and have no nutrition to speak of. Remember, all that carbohydrate breaks down into sugar in the bloodstream immediately upon digestion. Your body has no idea if that sugar came from gumdrops, oatmeals, or 36-grain sprouted organic bread. With that in mind, oatmeal is sugar too, and bread is also a grain packed with anti-nutrients. So in terms of nutrition, the nutrients found in grains are bound by anti-nutrients, which by all accounts render them mostly unavailable to our body for use. So they're bio-unavailable. So lollies are a quick insulin hit. You return to normal, there's no anti-nutrients. Whole grains have that prolonged insulin drip, but are pro-inflammatory. So I know what you're thinking, at least oatmeal's got some fiber, but where will I get my fiber if I don't eat grains? You'll get your fiber from the same place that those strapping, muscular, and we can presume gastrointestinally regular hunter-gatherers did in the absence of cereal grains. You'll get your fiber from vegetables. Grains have fiber, and that's about all they've got going for them. Truly, the fiber from grains does little apart from adding bulk to our poo. Fibrous veggies, on the other hand, are packed with amazing bioavailable nutrition. And you can see some examples here of the fiber. I didn't really know there was that much fiber in an avocado. That's exciting. Let's talk about why exercise is good for us. So I guess that pretty much by now, you most likely are exercising regularly or feel like you should be exercising regularly. And with exercise is like a massive topic, and we could really do a lot in it, but we're just going to go through it quickly. So you've read now the benefits of exercise, but it's actually ineffective for weight loss or weight management. So conventional wisdom has led us down the calories in, calories out path. And we took that to mean that as long as we're burning calories, then we're earning. Exercise became a means to undo food choices that didn't support us. And, look around, look down, it hasn't worked. As we've learned in this presentation, that state of our beach body goes much deeper than just avoiding conventional junk food and then burning everything off down the gym for an hour a day. 80% of body composition success is determined by how you eat. This ultimately comes down to insulin, the master metabolic hormone, as well as dialing down toxic load by avoiding anti-nutrient grains and unhealthy fats, those quasi-poisonous industrial seed oils. Besides which, the exercise to lose weight paradigm is inherently flawed. And when I first found this out, I was gobsmacked and just thought about all those wasted hours down at the gym 3 to 5 times a week for the last 25 years. Increased exercise equals increased appetite. Eat less, move more is an illogical set of behaviors metabolically. Eat less, move less, or eat more, move more makes sense when you think about it, right? And then there's this. Chronic cardio or overtraining constantly elevates your cortisol levels, which equals chronic stress, which equals stubborn abdominal weight. And we've already learned chronic stress is one of the primary lifestyle factors that's contributed to our cultural state of growing poor health. Either way, the sooner that we can disconnect weight management beliefs from exercise, the sooner we can liberate ourselves from exercise obsession and spending way too many of the precious hours of our life in the gym when we could be outside enjoying ourselves. So, one of the things I hear a lot of my clients say to me is, I should be exercising more. I need to get back into the exercise. I didn't do the workouts in the 21-day challenge. I'll do them this time. But really, the message here is that 80% of your body composition is determined by what you eat. And then the next important thing after that is sleep and stress management. So that's kind of good to know, isn't it? The fitness folly. The fitness industry jumped in, and I was part of it. I worked in the fitness industry for 10 years, and part of my compulsion to get this message out is to make up for that, the flawed advice I dished out in my gym years. And when I was working in the gym, every woman that I met, I said, what are your goals? And every woman said, I want to lose weight, I want to tone up. There was no correlation to food and mood. There was no correlation to food and overall health or moving your body for fun. It was all about earn and burn, baby. So it was determined that all you needed to do in order to maintain a healthy body composition was to earn and burn all of the calories that you'd eaten in a day, and $1 trillion industry was born. Generations of diet and fitness programs were built off this belief. But look around, it didn't work. To this day, we still see millions of people in gyms across the world strapped into their Fitbits, chronicling every burnt calorie and every step, and the obesity epidemic rages on. So why? The expression of movement is all wrong for the way that humans have evolved to move, which is to move frequently at a slow pace, to sprint once in a while, to lift heavy things, and to play. Isn't it liberating to consider that much of our expression of health is within our control? The disease states and unwellness symptoms listed earlier. I don't know what's that noise. The disease states and unwellness symptoms listed earlier can be influenced negatively or positively by our diet, our lifestyle, our behaviors, and our exposures. This is actually in your hands. It's hard. The hard part is taking responsibility for the fact that our current level of poor health may have been partially self-inflicted. But as soon as we can own that piece and move past it, the sooner we can begin the metabolic and genetic reparations that bring us back to what we are meant to be. We aren't even talking just about health or about lifestyle change here. We're talking about optimizing your experience of being a human. It's been suggested that it takes about 21 days of consistent new habits to begin to see a change in the expression of metabolic disease. What can you do right now for the next 3 weeks to positively influence your health? So the first thing is a mind shift. So believe that you have the power to moderate the expression of your genetic destiny. Be open to self-experimentation. And rather than listening to the masses, just listen to me. No. Rather than listening to the masses, listen to your body. Yeah. So a lot of us are measuring everything subjectively, but it's really interesting to actually just have an objective. No, the other way around. Just look at how you feel. Like, we've lost touch with how we feel. We've lost touch with when we're full, when we're hungry, how we feel like moving our body, all of those things. And remember that the conventional wisdom is what got us here in the first place. So why not go a little unconventional? So now we know what foods and fuels do not support the human experience. So go home from here and get these out your house, or if you are at home, get these out your house. Ditch the SAD food sources. SAD is an acronym for Standard Australian or American Diet. So grains, sugars, bad fats, and anything processed. Don't forget the beverages. They are your triple shot latte with caramel might be something that needs to be looked at. Repopulate your fridge and cupboards with human food. Load up your pantry and fridge with these new, really old actually, food staples. We're eating from meat, fish, fowl, eggs, nut seeds, fruits, vegetables, fats, and oils. So a few words on fruit. That's a question I always get asked. Can I eat fruit? Yes. Fruit is nutrient dense, but also quite high in sugar, and it can contribute to insulin dumping. So have in moderation and consider fruit as a treat. So, and you may want to consider when you do the 21-day challenge to have no fruit, because that really helps to change your palate. Because, and then use fruit as a bit of a treat, because, you know, fruit really is like nature's Skittles, and fruit can be rich in antioxidants and low glycemic and lots of awesome benefits as well. So that's a little bit on fruit. Are you writing all this down? Loads of things to eat, right? Just write down plants and animals. That's easy to remember, isn't it? So this is your new food pyramid. So vegetables, high in fiber, full of nutrition. So eating lots of veggies. Animal protein and fat offer satiety and fuel to help optimize insulin function. You want to be looking for about a palm serve. So on your hand, your palm, not a tree, that's too much. The palm size is an average protein source. If you wanted to dive into the right macronutrient levels for you, we can do that in a one-on-one session with me. Don't feel you need to mainline your fat sources, but so like you don't need to be like spooning butter into your mouth, but dress your veggies, cook in healthy oils, and choose fatty cuts of protein. Eat the skin on the chicken, eat the skin on the salmon, those sorts of things to get awesome healthy fats into you as well. Not necessarily add in fats left, right, and center. Which is important. Moderation food. So we want to be looking for fruit, high fat dairy if you can tolerate it. A lot of us can't. So if you do dairy, go for the high fat organic where you can. Safe starches and carbohydrates. Dark chocolate as well is a wonderful treat to have in a primal lifestyle. You might need to supplement. I need to supplement my health because I got into such a mess. And that's great. And you can get hold of a great health practitioner to help you with that. Herbs and spices can really enhance your health experience, but actual human food is the greatest needle mover. So fill your fridge with these ratios, fill your plate in these ratios, and fill your body with approved human food, and feel your health flourish. And mind your carbohydrates. Or at least have some awareness of how many you're eating. So it might be worthwhile just to kind of track this for a little bit until you get the hang of carbohydrates, because most of us have never counted carbohydrates. We've just been looking at calories. So treat your insulin response with due care and respect. Remember, it's the master metabolic hormone that decides if you get fueled or get fat. So what you could do is pull out your mobile phone and either load up apps such as MyFitnessPal or a Google search. That's what I just do. How many carbohydrates in a banana? To find the carbohydrate count of your favorite healthy foods. So if you are eating grains still, what's wrong with you? Get off the grains. If you are eating your health, which you assume are healthy foods, you might want to Google how many carbs are in oatmeal, whole grain breads, brown rice, apples, broccoli. People talk about net grams of carbohydrates because some carbohydrates are just fiber. We're resistant. We can't process them. But it's easier just to talk about the whole amount of carbohydrates than to get too tricky. And become aware of how much carbohydrates in everyday food and how much total you're getting every day. So our carbohydrate curve here suggests that even dropping daily carbohydrates down to a moderate 100 to 150 grams a day will put a stop to the insidious weight gain associated with insulin resistance. This is really a case of becoming intuitive and finding out what works for you. I find that, some days I'll go up to 150 grams of carbs, other days it'll be 60. And really it's looking at it as, over a period of time. So the 80-20 rule, this doesn't mean do primal 80% and 20% of the time eat junk food. What it means is striving for 100% compliance with the understanding that 80% is more realistic, right? Because if you strive for 80%, you'll hit 60. So aim for 100. And then if you have that extra glass of wine or you have that baked thing that your friend made, no problem. We're here to enjoy life. We don't need to become teetotal hermits to be healthy. And I'm really strong on that, as you'll know if you've worked with me before. So we're here to enjoy life, accept compromises, and reject obsessive mentalities, because although that's not healthy either. So figure out what's important for you. Have you ever asked yourself, what kind of life do you want? How do you want your life to look? How do you want to feel? Maybe you want to set some ideas around what you want your body fat percentage to look like, or maybe you've got fitness or athletic goals, or maybe you've got family gene risk factors that you want to avoid, or maybe you just want to have an effortless relationship with food where you're not obsessing about what you're going to eat next. Be really clear about what you want your health, wellness, and happiness goals to be, and strive for a level of perfection that lines up with that, and accepting that perfection is a myth. Everything's perfect as it is now. And aiming for perfection is just perfection is a form of fear. In the 21-day challenge and in my Set for Life program, the first thing we do is to set goals, to look at how we want our life to look. And then we create a life that gives us happiness in the now with a really cool vision that's pulling us forward and motivating us for the future. The exercise pyramid. So change the way that you look at exercise. And it's not about burning off the food that you've eaten. So we already know that, right? That doesn't work. So make exercise about fitness. So depending on what fitness certifying body you listen to, the components of fitness can include things like endurance, strength, power, speed, agility, balance, coordination, reaction time, mobility, flexibility, and body composition. For me, exercise is really about becoming present. It's about spending time in nature, disconnecting from technology, and connecting to myself and to the universe, and really finding that relaxation and joy from moving your body. The amazing human animal should be all of these things, not just any one of these things. And this is why a tunneled visioned approach to fitness is not recommended. So if you only run, you'll only be good at running. If you lift heavy, you'll only be good at lifting heavy things. If you only do Orange Theory, whatever that is, you'll only be good at Orange Theory. Variety is the spice of life, and always remember, inconsistency is the key. Yeah. This entire presentation has been about getting back to our evolutionary roots to help simplify the role food and lifestyle could play in creating and maintaining our optimal human experience. And the same is true for exercise. We can look to the way our ancestral humans moved in there every day. So lots of downtime. A good portion of the day was spent just chilling out. A lot of long, slow walking and frequent non-exercise movement. Hunting and gathering requires a lot of walking. Not only that, but our ancestors just kept busy, performing the busy work associated with running a tribe. Even our great-grandparents spent a lot of time moving. They didn't just sit all day in the car and drive to the gym so they could go crazy for a 45-minute spin class. I think that's the craziest thing ever, right? Driving to the gym and then doing something there. And also, especially for the mums listening to this, bear in mind that all of that work that you do, lifting up washing baskets, carrying shopping, picking kids up, putting kids in prams, walking them around, doing the school run, that's all moving frequently at a slow pace and lifting heavy things. Whereas people just disregard that. But that's actually really good for you. And you probably don't need to go to the gym if you're already doing all of that, because chances are your body might be a bit depleted after child growing a human and breastfeeding and getting up in the night to nurse the baby. And maybe what you need to do is to be having more time to recover. Quite a lot of mums that I coach with, they think they need to be working out to lose their baby fat, and I actually say what you need to do is to lie down and meditate. I'm like, oh, really? Yes. What else was that I went off then? So manual labor was the order of the day, and our species evolved to lift and carry heavy things from time to time. So all our sprint efforts, they are mimicking if a prey animal was on the horizon or a predatory animal had us in its sights. Our forebears had to be able to move very quickly, but only for long enough to catch dinner or to avoid being dinner themselves. And people who come to sprinting at first are a bit reluctant, thinking they're going to fall over or break themselves. But actually sprinting, it doesn't exhaust you. It just makes you feel flipping awesome and makes you feel alive, which is kind of a good feeling. So contrary to what you may read on fitness and health pages online, there is a lot more to life than diet and exercise. In fact, the very notion that our human experience can be boiled down to food and fitness is almost heartbreaking. Don't forget to emphasize the factors that enable us to be the wise, evolved animals we're meant to be. So lots of relaxation, doing nothing, slow life down, play. It's okay to do nothing. It's okay to goof off. It's okay to take it easy. In fact, your brain seriously needs it. Social connections. Reconnect with people.
At the very least, consider putting your phone away from time to time, especially at meal times. We have a rule, no toys at the table. Very important. You might want to try that one. Manage your chronic stress. Look, your stresses are real, but the assault of chronic stress is at the heart of every metabolic disease our culture is being plagued with. Encouraging you to manage stress is a loaded statement. So I'd like you to take stock of the things in your life that are chronically applying stress and figure out which pieces you can own and potentially take control over. It's a really good place to start. Sleep quality and quantity. The average human needs between 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. You may think that you thrive on 5 or 6, but you may have also downregulated just how flipping tired you are all the time. So try to get good quality sleep every night. Practice good sleep hygiene to ensure you're getting setting the stage for the highest quality, most restful sleep you can get. And in 21-day challenge, we do incorporate a 2-hour wind down routine to help with sleep. Sensible sun exposure. Vitamin D deficiency is linked to chronic health issues. In fact, there's research to support that the rate of cancers linked to vitamin D deficiency greatly outnumber the number of cancers relating to sun exposure. The best way to get vitamin D is from the sun, and the most sensible way to do that is a moderate amount of sun exposure most days of the week. For those living in cloudy, wintry climates, to have a vitamin D supplement. The skin cancer risk from sun exposure is heightened by sunburn, and getting a moderate amount of sunlight daily will actually protect you against that risk. There's also anecdotal evidence to support that eating fat can prevent you from burning, or you can stay out in the sun for longer. And also not wearing sunglasses, because then your pituitary gland knows that it is sunny and it releases the relevant, I don't know what it is, in your skin to prevent you getting burned. That's interesting. And having your sunglasses off during the day really helps you sleep on a night. We've got it the wrong way around. We go around with our sunglasses on during the day, so our body thinks it's nighttime, right? And then on a night when we want to go to sleep, we're looking at blue screens and our brain thinks it's daytime, and then we wonder why we can't sleep. Okay, so what I've encouraged here are just some simple shifts in food, exercise, and lifestyle. I haven't sold you any pills or any potions. I haven't given you any products to try. The recommendations here are whole, healthy, and based on our evolutionary biology. You have almost nothing to lose. You could try it for 21 days, never mind that 30 days, 21 days, and see how you can rewire yourself for optimal human badassery. In the 21-day challenge that starts on Monday, you can reprogram your genes, become a fat-burning beast, build and maintain lean muscle, stabilize energy and appetite, boost your immune and digestive function, decrease inflammation, improve your blood pressure, blood glucose, blood lipids, libido. Try it for 21 days. What have you got to lose? And that is the end of the presentation. I'm going to stop the recording here for the people who have been watching the replay. Thanks for being with me. If you would like to join me for the 21-day challenge that starts on Monday, please head to Primal Alternative 21-day challenge and sign up there. Now, how do I stop to record? Oh, I think if I press Control record. Stop recording. Okay, I found it. Bye.